Joining me now is a Bellator MMA bantamweight fighter who returns to the cage in 3 years. He takes on James Barnes at Bellator 192 on January 20th in Los Angeles. It is Chad George. Chad, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm fantastic, man. How you doing?
Doing really well. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it, and thank you for asking. Let us get right into it. As I said off the top, you have not fought in a very long time. Your last fight was on April 10th, 2015. It's been almost 3 years, and you have decided to come back to the MMA cage. Firstly, why have you been away from MMA since 2015? I know you've done other competition. You've been very active on combat jiu-jitsu, recently winning combat jiu-jitsu worlds. You've done EBI as well. Why, though, have you been away from MMA?
I got to a point where I had a lot of injuries. I had some life things that were going on. And I needed some time to step away and really figure out what it was that I wanted. Did I want to keep fighting? Did I want to build my relationship that I was in? Where did I want to take my academy that I had just opened? And so I figured, you know what? I'm at a time where I really didn't have anything left to prove in the sport, and I really became just uninterested in fighting anymore. The passion wasn't there, and my passion grew into other things. And so I needed to figure out what it was that I wanted. And so I did that. I spent some time. I built my school. I actually ended this long relationship that I was in. And then I fell in love with jiu-jitsu, so I started competing as much as I could in that. I wanted to compete on the elite levels of jiu-jitsu. I did that. I started doing combat jiu-jitsu. It really sparked that fire of just that high-level competition again, and my body's feeling great. My mind started feeling amazing, and the passion started growing, and, I couldn't stay away from it, and here we are.
When was the first time you competed after your last MMA fight? I know you did EBI 7 on July 2016. You made it to the second round. You faced Eddie Cummings in that one. He went on to win that tournament. Was that the first time you had competed in any sort of combat sport since your last MMA fight, or did you do other grappling before that?
I've done a lot of grappling tournaments. I've always done grappling tournaments, but that was actually my first professional grappling event. And I fell in love with the competition. I fell in love with the big stage jitters, the idea of competing against the best guys in the world just in one aspect of the sport. And I've always felt that to be the best in MMA, you have to be the best in every aspect, every level of the game. And so I knew I always had a passion for jiu-jitsu, and my understanding for it was on a fairly high level back then. And I just really wanted to investigate. I wanted to study. And the only way I was going to get better at it was by competing as much as possible. And the last couple of years, I don't even know how many times I competed, but I competed a lot on just many different levels. And I wanted to test myself against the best guys in the world. And when I got a chance to go against Eddie Cummings, I realized, man, there's levels to this, and I want to learn it. So my time away really was spent investigating and just studying the arts.
And if you don't mind me asking, how have you paid the bills over the past few years?
So the last couple of years, that was a big part of what was going on as well. I opened up my own school, California Mixed Martial Arts, here in Gardena, California. I spent the time building that. I have private clients. I do, individual training. I do consulting for martial arts gyms. And so that's pretty much how a lot of my bills have been paid. Just through the grinding and the hustling of the work side of it. And now my school it's self-sufficient. It's doing its own thing. We've got we just opened a second location, and we've got pros. We've got our amateurs. We have our foundation students. So with all that running smooth, and I don't have a toxic relationship in my life anymore. It's just now I have time to really focus on what I want, and right now, what I really want is to test myself and fight again.
Can you explain that turning point from going, you said there was a period of time when you just weren't interested in fighting in MMA. You sort of were not burnt out, but that interest wasn't there. You ended up moving on to grappling, as we talked about, for a couple of years. When did you sort of have that switch in mindset and say, I want to get back in the MMA cage? Was that recent, or had you been planning this for a while?
I've been planning this for a while, and when I say planning it, the concept of it has always been there. Because I never stopped training. That's what a lot of people don't realize, is that I never stopped training MMA. I've been continuously training every level of it since I retired from it. I've had guys in the UFC, I've had guys in Bellator, so it's not like I've been away from it. I've been in the gym grinding, just not with the weight on my shoulder of, well, what's the next thing that's going to happen? Where are you going to fight? When are you going to be fighting for a title? When are you going to be in the UFC? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? It was nice to separate myself from all that and just find the passion again just to train. And that's what jiu-jitsu did for me. It got me excited about training, and then as the levels of competition grew for jiu-jitsu, my desire to want to actually compete again in MMA kept getting bigger and bigger. And to be honest, it was when I did the first combat jiu-jitsu when I realized, like, man, this was pretty much like an MMA training camp, and the mind block of training for the monotony of it was gone. I was passionate about getting into the gym, improving every single day, and every day becoming one step closer to fighting these guys, which I can now say is a fight, because with jiu-jitsu it's hard for me to call it a fight. I call it a match. But with combat jiu-jitsu, it really was like a fight camp, and that just lit a fire in me. It really validated that I wasn't done yet, and I just kept moving forward with that. And then that was in March of last year for the first one. And then I started really picking it up, and I told my team that we were going to do a fight. And we accepted a fight for the Taku Palace title in August. It didn't happen. And then I did the Combat Jiu-Jitsu World Championships in November, which was amazing. I went against some of the best guys in the world. And now here we are, 1 week away for Bellator. I mean, it's exactly what I've always wanted to put together, and we're here doing it. And I'm excited.
If you never started competing in jiu-jitsu regularly or combat jiu-jitsu, would you still be in the spot? Or no? Do you think you would be a week away from coming back to MMA, or not at all?
I don't think so. I think that the times prior to, it was a different me. It was a different me mentally. It was a different me that was fighting for different reasons. And now the reasons that I fight are because I truly want to test myself. It has nothing to do with me wanting to fight to be better than the person in front of me trying to prove anything to the world. This really is a chance for me now, because the me now is so much more evolved than the one that was fighting previously. Before, I had all these things that I was trying to not prove to myself, but to learn about. And now I get to test myself, because I'm going into this fight with a whole different mentality. Now I just want to go in there and be the best version of me possible.
And I imagine there was quite a lengthy period of time where you figured, I'm never fighting in MMA again, right? Am I right there? Or?
It's funny. I thought that. My entire team had, from the day I stepped away, they were all like, "You're not done."
Really?
Just because I was always in the gym. I mean, I'm training with some of the best guys in the world on a daily basis, and I go with these guys that are world champions, and it was hard for them to believe that I was going to be done. And I told them, I was like, "No, you guys, I'm enjoying training again," and they knew it. And I think I was trying to convince myself that I was done, and it just didn't happen.
It's a funny story in MMA. People retire, but it's so hard to stay away. And I say that just from seeing other fighters retire and come back. I've never fought. I never will fight. But I've talked to enough fighters where it's impossible to stay away. It's really tough.
It is, because, it's the ultimate challenge, But now I don't have to fight anymore. It's like I've been doing this thing for so long. I have my school. I have other ways of revenue. It's not about the money anymore. It's not about me trying to prove anything. Like, I'm doing this genuinely now for the first time, and I don't even know how long, because I just want to fight. And that is such an amazing feeling to me.
Now, you mentioned you were supposed to make your comeback fight for Taku Palace fights down in California. What happened with that? Did your opponent just get hurt, or did it not come together? How did that fall out? And also, are you surprised that you're ending up making your comeback to the sport in the second biggest organization in the world, Bellator? Of course, your last fight was for Bellator, but, when sometimes you sort of, the interest maybe had fallen off a little bit because you hadn't fought in 2.5 to 3 years. Are you surprised you're fighting right off, your big layoff for the second biggest promotion on the planet?
No, not at all, because this is something that I truly believe in the law of attraction, and I had always wanted to come back and fight for Bellator. Okay. I had an opportunity to fight in August for the Taku Palace world title against Alex Perez, who is a great competitor. And he ended up pulling out right before the fight happened because he got picked up for the UFC Contender Series, which he actually destroyed the guy and then got picked up for the UFC, and then he won his UFC debut as well. So for me, coming back was always about I wanted to be paired up against the right opponent. And I thought Alex Perez was the right opponent, but I have nothing against Taku Palace. I think it's a phenomenal organization. For me, I always wanted it to be back with Bellator or with the UFC for when I come back. And so it didn't happen, and I was pretty bummed out about it. But then now here we are 1 week away from fighting on Bellator when, if you think about that, with the way the law of attraction works, that's what I'd always wanted to have happen anyways. And so now it's right here.
And it's funny just because I bet you were, at the time, very, in a brief period, kind of disappointed that the Taku Palace fight fell out, just because, that's sort of a natural reaction. And then, like anything in life, it sort of all works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right after the Taku Palace fight didn't happen, I got picked up for the Combat Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. That was in November. So I went straight from the Taku Palace camp to the Combat Jiu-Jitsu World Championships camp, which led right into this camp. So, I have been constantly active since a full camp leading into the Taku Palace event.
Do you have a multi-fight deal with Bellator? Or I know with a lot of their prelim fighters and fights, they just do like the one-fight deal because it's in the area you live in or where you're from. Do you have a multi-fight deal with Bellator still?
No, this is a single fight, but I'm hoping, with a good performance, we'll be able to open up some discussions. But, to be honest, I'm not even worried about that right now. I am truly just fascinated with going into this one fight and with no expectations past that. I just want to fight. I want to have the best performance that I can have and go out there and have fun doing it.
Do you feel like you have more pressure than usual because you haven't fought in so long, and anybody who's excited to see you back, they're probably expecting good things from you, and even maybe they aren't considering the fact that ring rust is sometimes a problem with some fighters. Do you feel pressure, or do you feel a lack of pressure, or is it sort of all the same?
I feel a lack of pressure because I have nothing left to prove. I've been doing this, I've done it, and now we're here doing it again, and there's no pressure because I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody other than to myself that I want to challenge myself. And so, I can't control anything that my opponent's going to do or anybody else for that matter. All I can do is control how I act and react to things. And that's why I think that going into this fight, there's really no pressure on me. If anything, there's pressure on my opponent because, he's going in there against me, and I don't know where his mindset's at. I know he's a tough competitor, but I think there's more pressure on him than there is on me.
I mentioned ring rust. Is that something you've thought about? Has that crossed your mind? And if so, are you at all concerned about it?
Not at all. I think the idea of ring rust is because people get complacent and they're inactive. I haven't been inactive the entire time that I haven't been in there. Yeah, I haven't been fighting MMA, but I've been inside the big stages the entire time I've been gone. I've been competitive on the largest stages of the world in grappling and combat jiu-jitsu. So it's not like I haven't been under the lights and I haven't had to perform on, very elite levels. So I don't think the ring rust is going to be anything that is valid. I think I'm going to go out there and I think we're going to see the best me I have ever had in my entire career.
How do you view your future in MMA? Like, because you mentioned just a minute ago that you don't have anything left to prove in mixed martial arts. You're only doing this because you want to challenge, because it's for yourself. You want to come back. So are you back for good? Do you have multiple years left? Does it come down to what happens on January 20th? What comes next after this fight? Do you have any idea what your future in MMA will look like?
That's what's amazing about where we're at right now. Like, I have no expectations past this. Whether I fight again, whether I fight 20 more times, or I don't. Like, I'm not even putting any thought into that. Right now, all of my attention goes to January 20th. And we'll figure out what we're going to do after that based on how I feel after the fight. I mean, maybe I get into a complete dogfight. I need a couple of months to just even recover before I even think about it. Or maybe the excitement of it goes, yeah, let's sign a deal. I have no idea. And so me dwelling on, like, what's going to happen next is kind of irrelevant when we have a job to do 1 week away from today, or tomorrow, I should say.
Right. And no matter what happens as far as in the fight goes, as far as what happens after, whatever your sort of decision is, do you want to keep competing for multiple years, maybe take a couple one-off fights, or maybe you'll close the doors on MMA entirely? We don't know what will happen, as you said. Do you still plan on keeping active in combat jiu-jitsu and EBI and other grappling? Is that for sure?
Nothing for sure. I'm a competitor. I mean, that's something that I can't deny, that I am always going to be competitive probably till the day that I die. And whether it's doing combat jiu-jitsu, whether it's back in MMA, or we're playing combative ping pong, I don't know, but for me, I thrive in competition, and I thrive in overcoming challenges. And so whatever comes next, whether it's in the cage or on the mat, I really don't care, but put the challenge in front of me and I will overcome it.
If you do go back to grappling, maybe you have enough time where you're able to do MMA and grappling, or you shut the doors for whatever reason on MMA, go back to grappling solely. Do you want to do EBI again? Because you haven't done EBI since for about a year and a half. You've been focusing on combat jiu-jitsu. Do you want to mix it up, or if you do go back to jiu-jitsu, is it just going to be CJJ, or as you said, do we just have to wait and find out, kind of?
I'm open to anything, and that's why I started focusing on combat jiu-jitsu, is because that was just the opportunities that were placed in front of me, just like the opportunity to fight for the Taku Palace title, and then that led into me fighting for Bellator again. So, I'm actively pursuing the next opportunity, and I am grinding every single day, not just in the gym, but just in life, to just constantly become a better person and to be a better businessman about everything that I do. And so everything that I do now is to build for the next step. Whatever the next step may be, I don't know, but we're building towards it.
Are you a better MMA fighter or grappler?
I think they go together. They're hand in hand. I think my understanding of grappling is at a very high level, but I also think my understanding of MMA is at a high level as well. So I think they go together. I think my MMA fighting and my jiu-jitsu are one of the same. I approach them with the same ideologies about the way I look for things. The language of the sports is what I think I excel in, and I think they're very similar in those languages.
Similar question, but it's slightly different. Where do you feel you have the most potential? And the reason I'm asking is because the thing is, with MMA, you've been gone from the scene of MMA for 2.5 years to 3 years, where in Jiu-Jitsu, EBI, and CJJ, you've been around pretty recently. You just won the CJJ title in November, very recently, of course. But then also, grappling, MMA is more popular than grappling, and so there's sort of, two sides to this. Where do you feel you have the most potential?
Before I would say MMA, but now I think that I have a lot of respect within the jiu-jitsu community that'll tell you that, I'm one of the best grapplers in the world, and I believe that. So, I know that I can compete with anybody on any level, and I've proven it on the ground. So, also adding, ground and pound and the way I put things together, that's where the MMA comes in. So, I think that I'm still and always have been one of the best 135-pounders in the world. And now that I've had time to really refine who I am as a fighter and what I'm capable of, we're going to see all of that come out January 20th. I mean, I have a lot of tools that I just haven't pulled out of the shed over the years, and because there's no pressure on me anymore, I get to let all of that come out and just let the pure me have fun.
Can you talk about the differences a little bit between competing in just jiu-jitsu, EBI, as opposed to combat jiu-jitsu? And it seems like a weird question because one you can slap, the other you can't. But, maybe a bit more in-depth as far as the preparation. How different is the training camp for both? Because one, let's be honest, is a bit more rough than the other. And, how, as far as what you look for, as far as looking for submissions, as far as the openings, it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Combat jiu-jitsu is very much like an MMA fight where, you're looking for openings to strike. If you watch my combat jiu-jitsu fights, I'm pretty much doing ground and pound the entire time. And I told everybody from the beginning that I wasn't slapping. I was going to be palm striking and looking for violent ways to pass the guard and look for my submissions. And I did that in every single one of my matches from the first combat jiu-jitsu to combat jiu-jitsu world. We brought in guys that were all MMA guys that were trying to punch my head in for very long lengths of fights because those fights were 10-minute rounds plus overtime, and you're doing multiples in one night. So that was a very rough training camp, and that was very similar to the mentality that you have to have with MMA. I think a lot of guys in jiu-jitsu, when they do jiu-jitsu preparations, it's more fun. And I know it's very competitive, but there's nothing more real than when you're getting hit in the face. And combat jiu-jitsu was very much like an MMA camp.
Now, Wagner Rocha, on the same card on the first Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, just after your bout, you competed at Bantamweight. I believe Wagner won the lightweight title, and he actually became the first person in Combat Jiu-Jitsu history, including the first few matches you guys had on the EBI card earlier that year. In March, he became the first CJJ competitor to win a match with strikes, with palm strikes. How incredible was that to watch?
That was awesome. That was exactly what we've been talking about, is that if you have high-level jiu-jitsu and you know how to put the strikes in together, you can finish anybody. And that's exactly what he proved. He beat a very elite grappler, and I think it was Nathan Orchard, and he did it with strikes. So to be able to see that in what they're, and they're looking for, the whole concept of combat jiu-jitsu was to let the strikes open up the submission. But if you can't stop the position and the strikes just keep coming, that's another sign of just elite, superior grappling.
Awesome. Well, Chad, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it. One last question. How do you get the jobs on Bellator 192? You're taking on James Barnes in Los Angeles, January 20th. How do you get the job done?
We're going to go in there. We're going to have some fun. If he gives me one opening, whether it's on the feet or on the ground, I will grab anything he gives me, and I can finish him from the first moment to the last. And I'm just excited to get back in there. I'm not one for predictions, but I will tell you this. I have 15 minutes to find one hole, and I will find it.
Chad, thanks again. Really awesome stuff. It's been a pleasure talking to you for the first time. Hopefully it won't be the last time. Before I let you go, let my audience know where they can find you on social media, and if there's anybody you'd like to thank or give a shout-out to, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I always have to thank you guys, because without you, none of this would be possible. You guys get our messages out there. You guys let the whole world have an audience to follow. So thank you guys for all that. You can find me on Instagram, Chad Savage George. You can find my gym, CMMA Fitness, on Instagram. And, we'll see you guys January 20th, Bellator at the Forum. I'll be fighting James Barnes, and I'm excited. Can't wait.